how's it going? Night door, you know, Bob. Just a sec. It's got such a this particular clay pipe has such a big draw of sucking tobacco uh, through the stem. You know, I have to tell you, I really am getting into these clay pipes. I have two. The one that Will sent me, which unfortunately has a partial blockage in the stem. I can fit a pipe cleaner into the stem, but it won't go all the way through because it butts up against something, which explains why it's got such a very hard draw. I have to suck on it like I'm sucking a cherry through a straw in a milkshake. And then this one that I got from Penn Valley Pipes and Tobacco. It's only $10, so I figure even on my limited budget, I could afford to do it. And it's got a really, nice draw. And clay pipes, for those of you that haven't tried it, I really encourage it. It really adds to the taste of whatever you're smoking. For instance, I'm smoking Sunset Breeze. Many of you are familiar with Sunset Breeze. It's Peterson tobacco. I truly don't consider it to be, I'm a big fan of aromatics, but I do enjoy English as well, as long as it's a well-made, English. Nothing stands out like overly strong Latakia, that type of thing. And Sunset Breeze, I could take it or leave it as a tobacco. And but in a clay pipe, it's much better. Better enough, good enough that I'm actually, enjoying it. Like I said, in a regular pipe, and one of my corn cobs, in a briar, Sunset Breeze, I can take it or leave it. But in a clay, it's quite enjoyable. So I just rehydrated my Sunset Breeze. It had gotten dry, so it's having a dickens of a time staying lit. So I really encourage you to try out a clay pipe. And I'm afraid to, don't want to clench the clay pipe. I'm afraid I, crunch through the stem. So I really encourage you to try clay. And but that wasn't the original reason for this video. One, I want to offer my sympathies and best wishes to get well soon to Charred Briar. Kenny, he's in the hospital. And what really sucks for him is that he's a veteran, so he should be eligible for free care from the VA hospital, but he lives 4 hours away from the nearest VA hospital. So any kind of emergency medical care for him is almost impossible from the VA. Which means he has to rely on the insurance that he's got from his employer, and then, you know, paying what they don't cover, which can be really, really expensive, as everybody knows. You know, and it really sucks. I only live 10 minutes away from a VA hospital, but VA hospital here in town where I live is mainly for drug and alcohol treatment. They do no medical treatment at all at my hospital, at my VA hospital. They have doctors there. The doctors will see you. They'll examine you. They can do X-rays and blood tests, urine tests. You know, all the lab work you have to do. And then, you know, if you need some sort of medicine, they'll prescribe you medicine. But if you need quote treatment, okay, well, physical therapy. I'm getting physical therapy at the VA hospital. But if you need some sort of medical treatment, they send you out to a civilian doctor, which they pay for because they sent you there, or they'll send you to the VA hospital in Minneapolis, which is about 100 miles away. But at least, you know, they pay for it. If they send you out to a civilian doctor, they pay for it. And even though I live 10 minutes away from the VA, you know, and they will, like I said, if they send you to a civilian doctor, they pay for it. If I have to go to the emergency room because something happens really suddenly, like the way it did with Kenny, I have to pay for it all completely out of my pocket. It doesn't matter that the VA would pay for it if they sent you there. If you go to the emergency room without them sending you there, they won't pay for it at all. For instance, let's see, I went last year. I had water on the lungs, and I don't know if you've ever had water on the lungs. It was also on the heart, and this causes a lot of chest pain, and I thought I was having a heart attack, and I pretty well knew the situation, that if you go into an emergency room, you pay for it on your own. So I was determined that I was going to get the VA hospital to send me. So I was on my way home. I had just dropped, let's see, I was on my way back to the factory in my truck that I was still working at the time, and I started to experience chest pain, and about a week, you know, a couple days, a few days before getting back home, and I refused to go to an emergency room because I didn't want to have to pay for everything on my own, and I didn't have insurance through my employer. So I made, you know, I stuck it out, you know, not being able to sleep because of the pain, you know, barely able to function. Made it back to the factory, turned in the truck, didn't do any paperwork because stiff neck. I do that about 20-30 times a day. It's like cracking your knuckles. But I didn't do any paperwork. I just simply hopped in my car and started heading, you know, back home so I could go to the VA hospital. The factory was 98 miles away from where I live, you know, which is also where the VA hospital is. So I had to drive 98 miles, and on those roads it took usually about 2 hours to get back home. And I figured if I could get to the VA hospital, I could go, walk in, get a doctor to see me, and he'd say, yeah, go, we'll send you to the civilian hospital. They pay for everything. So I was, like I said, I was in a lot of pain, and I was driving considerably faster than I should have been. I was driving, speed limit was 55 on these, more or less secondary backcountry highways, and I was driving something like 80 miles an hour, and I picked up a cop following me, and so I pulled over, and when he walks up to the door, to talk to you through the window like they do, he could see, I was clutching my chest. I was, I could barely breathe, and he said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I think I'm having a heart attack," because I didn't know it was water on the chest. I thought I was having a heart attack. And I told him I was speeding because I needed to get back home so I could get to the hospital. And he said, "Well, if you're having a heart attack, I can't allow you to drive." So he called for an ambulance right then and there. And so they took me to the hospital, and then while I was in the emergency room, they asked me about insurance. I said, "I don't have insurance. I normally get covered by the VA hospital." So they called the VA, and the VA said to send me to the Minneapolis VA for treatment. And the Minneapolis VA, they called them to arrange transportation. The Minneapolis VA was filled up. They had no beds whatsoever, and they said send them to Northwest Abbott, which is a heart cardiac care place. So they sent me there. Well, I found out later that nobody would admit to having authorized me to be sent to Northwest Abbott. So I had to pay. I ended up staying in Northwest Abbott for like 4 or 5 days. I had to pay for that completely, 100% out of my own pocket, because nobody in the VA system would admit that I had been authorized to go there instead of the Minneapolis VA. So that, so despite having, access to the VA hospital on a regular basis the way I do, I ended up with one huge frickin' bill, which I haven't paid yet because I can't pay it. They ended up prescribing me some pills which they said would dry up the fluid on my lungs, and then they kept me for 4 days and then sent me home. And about a week later, I was still having problems, and I was at home, and again I felt, damn, like I'm having a heart attack. So instead of the same thing to do, I was in so much pain I thought I was having a heart attack, would be go straight to the emergency room. I went to the VA hospital. I kid you not, which is only 10 minutes away from where I live, staggered into in there to the walk-in clinic, and went to the desk where they talked to the reception and said, "I think I'm having a heart attack," and then just sort of plopped down onto a chair, and they immediately saw me, didn't have to wait for anybody, and their very quick examination, they could hear the water on my lungs. I guess you can hear it, and they said, okay, we're going to send you to the hospital, and they called for an ambulance, and I told the doctor, that I wasn't going anywhere whatsoever unless I had it in writing that I was being authorized to go to the hospital. So I made the doctor give me a piece of paper saying that I've been authorized to go to the hospital before I let them put me in the ambulance. and so, long story short, I was there for a few days. They stick this big needle in your lungs and draw water out of your lungs, and they ended up drawing like, over a quart of water out of my lungs, and then I was better after that. But I had learned my lesson that first time. I made them give me a piece of paper, and I had it in my hand saying I was authorized. So, yeah, the medical system here in the United States is freaking screwed up. It really, really is. And I think I agree with Kenny. Kenny's commented to me that all civilian hospitals should authorize, VA health care. I mean, if you're a veteran, you should be free of charge. And I agree, but our country's just so screwed up. There's so much freaking paperwork that, the red tape that you have to cut through, it's just ridiculous. It's a pain in the ass. So anyway, Kenny, I hope you get better, get well soon. Take care, buddy. I just wanted to share with you that even though I live so close to a VA hospital, you live 4 hours away. Being close doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get medical care. So take care, buddy.